Welcome to crafting Shevitsa, or добре дошли в ръкоделницата по везба. This is a tutorial for a wall hanging that I created for a kids embroidery workshop. It was for beginners, somebody who has never embroidered before or very little. And it's because it's a cross stitch, it will also function as an introduction to cross stitch for beginners. And this is my helper William. He's my cat and he'll be my assistant. Okay, so the Shevitsa, Шевицата на този модел идва от полите на момичешка риза от Видинския край. Видях я в музея Кръстатата казарма в Видин. Тя е част от изложбата им с народни носии. Шевицата е малка, прави се с кръстат бод. Fabric in general is made when vertical threads are woven with horizontal threads in between them. So in our case, as I pull the horizontal thread, we get the beautiful bottom of our fabric. Okay, let's begin. If you're using one of the kits that I make, the only other tools you will need is scissors and a measuring tape of some sort. So, we begin by threading the needle. In this case, I'm using woolen yarn that is kind of reminds me of like the old-fashioned homespun yarn that were used for embroideries and for the woolen garments like these. So, I will begin with a thread that's about an arm's length. I find this to be a good length, not too long, so it doesn't get tangled up, and not too short, so that I don't have to change thread all the time. First, we're gonna thread the needle. Make sure that you have a clean cut edge. I pinch it in between my two fingers so that I don't see the end. And as it goes through, it cannot move because I'm holding it, and boom, it's done. По принцип, бродерията няма възли, но понеже ние сме начинаещи, ще направим възъл, с който да започнем. Here we go. So, I want the Shevitsa to be in the center of my wall hanging. So, to find the center, I am going to fold my fabric into, not counting the part where the wooden rod would be, so I'll leave that off. So fold in two, and then I'll fold in two one more time, and this edge, this corner right here is my center. So as I unfold slowly, I'll pin my needle there. From my little picture of the model, I know that the Shevitsa is about 3 by 3 inches. I want to start with the green from the bottom. So to start on the bottom, that means that I'll have to measure 1.5 inches down from the center. So I take my measuring tape. I go 1.5 inches down, which is about here. And then this is about 2/3 of the way to the right, so that makes it about 1/2 inch from the center, just under 1/2 inch. So let's say roughly about here, and that's where I begin. Let's start from the bottom up. So in cross stitch, we make diagonals for this fabric every 2 threads, and when we have 2 or more in a row, it's customary that we do the diagonals all one way. In this case, we have 2 squares, and then we turn back and do the diagonals the other way, like this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about technique. Аз не съм привърженик на правила по принцип. Но има една тенденция да се казва, че няма правила, нали, прави си го както си искаш, както ти е удобно. There's nothing wrong with doing it any way, whichever you like, but I feel that it's easier to learn a skill or technique, because when you're skillful in what you do, you perform better and faster, and then you have the freedom to be creative with the material you use. So I suggest learn how people who know are doing it, and then you can modify their knowledge according to what fits you. So I recommend you try to follow the way I embroider for now as you're learning. Even if you later feel like you want to change something, or it doesn't quite fit you, you don't like it very much, you can always change what I do. But just learn a method, learn a technique, and then you can adjust according to how it fits you. I'm holding the fabric with my two fingers, with my thumb and my forefinger. I'm pinching the fabric like this. And when I embroider, my thumb guides my needle on the front side, and my forefinger guides my needle on the back. So literally my forefinger I've put right where the needle has to go. Another thing to do is always point the needle away from you, never towards you. You don't want to pull towards you, you always want to pull away from you. As you learn later on, you'll be able to go sideways and do other little tricks, but for now, you want to always go away from you, whichever way you go. Needle, I hold the same way I'm holding the fabric. I'm pinching it this way so it can go flat, horizontal. Every so often I have to go down like this, but in general, we go like this. And then another thing to know is, specifically for cross stitch, it's important to try not to split the fabric the way it's woven, but to actually put the tip of the needle in between the threads. That makes for nice, perfect squares. Another important thing for embroidery is how tight we hold the yarn to embroider with. If it's too tight, if we pull it too tight, it will crunch the fabric. So you have to try to keep the thread basically just hugging the top of the fabric. Something that helps me, as I approach the end of my thread, I pull very gently. I want to feel on the bottom of my finger that I've pulled the thread all the way to the end, that there isn't any loose thread on the bottom. But also, as I pull, sometimes I will pinch the thread with my thumb so that when I pull, I don't pull too hard. It takes a bit of practice. Don't worry, you'll get it. Another thing particular to the cross stitch is that it looks nice when all the bottom diagonals face one way and all the top diagonals face the other way. I have seen many Bulgarian really old embroideries that they don't follow that rule. The diagonal can change sides, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it right now. But depending on the figure, sometimes they actually turn it. It looks like it's intentionally turned. But I'd say for now, we try to keep it in one direction. Okay, so let's talk about Shevitsa. Let's talk about why does this look like this? Does it just fill space? Does it mean anything? Shevitsa traditionally was decoration for clothing for all men, women, and children. It's only been about 120, 30 years that people have actually tried to study Shevitsa and its meaning. And by then, a lot of the women who knew the symbols were no longer alive. But what we do know is that they were functional. To the people, Shevitsa was just like tattoos for other cultures. They functioned as amulets or as talismans. They were supposed to protect you from evil forces. They're supposed to give you health and strength and prosperity and life. And they were supposed to describe which region of the country you were from and how, about your family life and the family that you came from. So they were, to the people who wore them, they were very functional. They were not just something interesting visually. So if you look carefully, it's easily recognizable that it's a stem with two flowers, but it's very geometric. It's very stylized. It doesn't look realistic. Even if I were to draw this, it will probably look realistically something more like this, a lot more round, not so square. Now, I am sure that there is more than one reason for that. People have drawn their surroundings in simplified signs and patterns from ancient history. But I'd like to share one reason that I have heard and that I believe is true. A little bit of history. Bulgaria was 500 years part of the Ottoman Empire. Bulgarians were traditionally Christian people, but in the Ottoman Empire, the Muslim religion was the dominant religion. So their rules, their worldview dominated the other nations that lived in those lands. So in the Muslim religion, traditionally, particularly in religious art, was not allowed to display, to draw humans and animals. That was considered that God was the creator and only He made humans and animals. And so a lot of the decorations in Muslim religious art are geometric patterns and flowers, vines and leaves. And so this is what we see in the clothing in my region, particularly in northwestern Bulgaria. It was a lot of flowers, and a lot of them look very geometric, not lifelike. Even the more realistic flowers are stylized. They're more stylized and they're more geometric. What I find fascinating is this blend between our internal reality, we want health and we want prosperity and we want good life, comes expressed in our external reality, in our clothing, in what we wear, in what we put around ourselves. And at the same time, the environment that we live in, our external reality, what we see and the conditions that are imposed on us, or the conditions that are simply around us, influence the way we reflect this internal world and how it looks like. So to me, that's fascinating, and I find the Shevitsa a great example. It makes me think about how I connect with my reality today. So that's a little bonus for you there. Okay, so let's get back to the cross stitch. So I think you noticed with cross stitch you are counting squares on every row and you keep going. I always embroider from bottom up. So sometimes, depending on how you move, I turn my work upside down to complete the rows. I just have to be careful to get the diagonals in the right direction. Then I'll flip my work back again, right side up. I simply try to follow the simplest path to complete the pattern. I don't know of a specific rule that you need to follow, just whatever makes sense to you. And again, we are beginners. Even if you make mistakes, don't worry about it. You can always undo your work and go back and redo it. Just follow the shortest path to the next stitch. I think you got the basics of the cross stitch, so you can finish this on your own. If you have any questions, please use the comments below. Thank you for joining me and see you soon. Or благодаря за вниманието и до скоро!